This is Orchot Tzaddikim, for those who are just joining us. Orchot Tzaddikim is translated into English as the way of the righteous. It is a classic in Musar, which is about, character development, self-growth. And we've gone through section by section, chapter by chapter, each chapter devoted to a specific attribute or quality, character trait. And we just started yesterday the one having to do with joy. The main point here is that from a Jewish perspective, joy is describing not a type of effervescent, bubbling over, smile to ear laughter type of a joy, but rather a type of an internal, serene, calm, fulfilled type of a joy. Of course, a person can be happy and smile and also enjoy a good joke and things like that, but the main thing is not just to plaster a smile across one's face artificially, but to be serenely content. And the continuation of the chapter is going to go into more about how a person can attain that type of fulfillment, that type of feeling of contentedness. But after the introduction of just defining for us what joy is and what type of joy we're talking about, the author goes first into what types of joy are unacceptable, inappropriate. And then he's going to go into what types of joy are. So what we saw yesterday is that things having to do with scoffing, ridicule, making fun of other people, taking lightly other people's, let's say, slip-ups, particularly when it has to do with slip-ups having to do with service of Hashem. And he might be happy about the fact that this person is slipping up. Certainly if the person was, let's say, ill-intentioned and he slipped up, all the more so, if he wasn't ill-intentioned, we shouldn't be laughing and making fun of and happy about other people's downfall, because that's tantamount to be happy about the fact that somebody else is not serving Hashem properly. So all of these are some of the types of negative expressions of happiness that we saw yesterday. Today is what we're going to see today is going to go into some more examples of that. And also get onto the topic of mood modifiers and joy. In the context of the book, he's talking primarily about drinking alcohol, specifically drinking wine, but you can substitute modern equivalents of that as well. So let's just see how that works. On page Sameches then, towards the bottom, the last paragraph on the bottom of the page. Yesh od simcha v'schok ra me'od. There's another form of joy and laughter, which is also very bad. Kogon mi shemisachek b'mi shezohir ba'avodas Hashem. Here, it's not only talking about somebody who is laughing at somebody because they've slipped up in their avodas Hashem. Rather, it's talking beyond that, laughing at somebody, making fun of somebody, jeering, ridiculing somebody for serving Hashem. That person would be a real scoffer. Making fun of somebody who's trying to fulfill the mitzvahs. V'yesh b'zeh arba ros. There are 4 forms of evil associated with. Ha'echas, the first one. Shehu machshich nafsho me'od. Me'or mitzvahs. A person who's laughing about other people, making a laughing stock and mimicking or ridiculing, or what's a better word? Mocking, that's the one. Mocking people for serving Hashem. So a person is taking God and taking the mitzvahs lightly, and as a result, in his heart, in his own soul, he's going to be darkening himself towards those mitzvot. He's occluding himself. That's probably the worst evil, that he's cutting himself off from anything holy and pure. Kshehu moyes v'mesachek v'mekayem ha-mitzvos, az yizganu ha-mitzvos be'einav. Therefore, when he laughs and makes fun of people who are fulfilling of the mitzvahs, so the mitzvahs themselves become belittled and negligent in his eyes. Ve'ashniya, the second one, ki ulai mitoch haschok yimonu hatzadik mitzidkosav ki lo yichol lizbol haschok. Secondly, his laughter is going to cause the righteous person perhaps to also lessen his observance, his commitment to the mitzvahs, because he doesn't want to be embarrassed, or he doesn't want to be looked down upon, or all the other reasons a person might be embarrassed to do the right thing. Vashlishis, ki onashim rabim asher lo nisu leleches bedarkei Hashem yizbarach lo yuchlu la'asos teshuva mipnei hatzchok. Other people who maybe have not started mitzvah observance, or even this person himself, because of laughing and jeering and making fun of and mocking other people, he's going to prevent other people from even starting. So he's going to darken the observance, the appreciation of the mitzvah himself. He might come to hinder other people from performing it, and he might actually prevent people from even starting. Because why should he start up with the scoffers? If he has any havamina, any idea that he might start observing, but he knows that he's going to get it over the head because of this, so he'll stop. He won't even. It's not a matter of stopping. He won't start. And they'll go into darkness all of the days. So now he's not only causing this person to not receive the good that is hidden for the righteous, he actually causes him to go to punishment. A person who's laughing, jeering, scoffing, mocking, in this type of category, he's of the category of people who are described as causing others to sin, causing the public to sin. And it says about such a person that he himself has no tikkun, has no tshuva, a person who causes other people to sin. Haravis, and the fourth evil about laughing about other people's observance, shedome lelistim, they're like similar to robbers. She'oimed al proshes drochim, they're standing on the byways, the highways. V'kotzetz ragle hamevim doron hamelech, and they cut off the legs of people who are on their way to bring gifts and presents of honor and appreciation to the king. Such a person is like a person who hates and an enemy of the king. This is very evil. There are plenty of people who have an agenda to be anti-religious, and they're always looking for opportunities to besmirch religious people or the religion, finding all types of opportunities to scoff and to ridicule and to mock, and to capitalize on any mistakes or any harm that religious observant people do, even though it might only be a minority of people. And it's an agenda that people have. It's common here in Israel. The tension that exists between, traditionally, the tension between the non-observant and the observant. The country was set up by people, by and large, who were not observant. Even though they were raised observant, they had a project, an agenda, even if initially they were well-intended, thinking that this was going to be the best for the Jewish people, to save them from the suffering of exile, bring them to their own land, and so forth and so on. And there might be truth to that to a certain extent. But a lot of it was intermingled with a rejection of Judaism, of observant Judaism, a denial of their background. And it took two forms initially. One was either people who, even if they were intentionally not observant, they were nevertheless sympathetic to observance because they were raised that way, or their parents were that way, or they had some traditional values. And others' approach was different, that they used their background in Torah and Judaism to extirpate with their knowledge as best as possible anything having to do with Judaism. The second category, of course, is much worse. And we know, for example, in scenarios where Jews from the eastern lands, like North Africa, Iraq, and Iran, and a more notorious example of Yemen, certain people of the Zionist agenda intentionally misled them and tried to take them away from their observance in order to secularize them and make them part of this new Israeli nation. Again, I'm not criticizing. I'm not saying that a Jew should not want to live in Israel, not appreciate what we have here. But there are certain aspects of it which are not particularly pleasant, and it's illustrating the point that it's talking about here in the book, which is that scoffers and mockers would use all types of these techniques to uproot Judaism from their traditional Jews from their traditional Jewish practices. I know firsthand from my father-in-law, for example, my wife's father, who was born in Yemen to a very observant family. His father was a rabbi, he was a dayan, he was a judge, and he was also a Kabbalist, and he was a very important member of the Yemenite Jewish community there. Jews and non-Jews consulted him for his wisdom and good advice, and so and his righteousness, and so forth and so on. But every single one of his children were separated. Nearly every one of his children were separated forcibly, perhaps more with conversion or less with just very strong persuasion, but separated from him and his wife, and they were all separate, sent to different kibbutzim around the country, and raised to be proper, secular, modern Israelis. And a few of them came back on their own, one of which was my father-in-law, blessed memory. And he says very explicitly that he remembers being taken away from his family, being put into institution, having his payas cut off against his will. He was a small child, he was frightened, and it was forced upon him. And he was told that he no longer had to eat kosher or keep Shabbat because Jews in the land of Israel don't need the mitzvot. The mitzvot are only necessary for Jews outside of Israel to maintain their connection to Jewish people, which is obviously not true from a Torah perspective, but it was one of the propaganda lines that was used to uproot the Jewish people from Judaism. And this is not something particular just to the Yemenite community. It happened to most of the Sephardi communities. It happened less to the Ashkenazi communities here in Israel because it already happened outside of Israel, where these movements started in Europe. On the other hand, those who became aware of what was going on bolstered themselves in the commitment, perhaps sometimes even pushing themselves to an otherwise unnecessary extreme in order to protect themselves, which resulted in a type of a dichotomy of both extremes, which is, kind of the tension, probably, part of the tension that we have today, being very polarized like this. But unfortunately, even today, it's problematic. And in recent modern, in current events, there is a minister of the Interior who has not been a religious person, and he recently made a decision that certain of the Israeli law regarding public Shabbos observance be upheld in Tel Aviv, and the media in general heaped embarrassment and abuse upon this generally accepted to be secular minister of the government for upholding this law of Shabbat observance in Tel Aviv. And the way that the secular press presented it was basically as follows. It became known that this person recently started keeping a minimal degree of Shabbos. So they blamed him, they accused him of being a Baal Tshuva, which he's not, but they presented it as if he's a Baal Tshuva who is now a Shabbos observer and therefore a religious extremist who is part of the imposition of religiosity on the secular public here, which was a totally distorted version of the truth, because for most of his life he hasn't been religious. As far as I know, he's not a Baal Tshuva. He just started observing to a certain minimal degree the idea of Shabbos, and that has nothing to do with the law, because the law was already held by the Supreme Court a few years ago. And the government has been in the process of deciding whether this law should be implemented or not. The law itself, and certainly the minister's application of the law, it was not intended and is not intended to affect in any way, and I'm not condoning this, I'm just telling you the facts, in any way to change the status quo regarding the way people recreate in Tel Aviv on Shabbos. It's only specifically about closing markets, only markets in Tel Aviv on Shabbat, right? But they neglected the whole thing. They made an extreme Baal Tshuva out of him, and they presented it as if it's something which is a sweeping change of status quo in Tel Aviv, and it's going to affect the quality of culture and nightlife in Tel Aviv on Shabbat. And it's a total distortion of the truth. It was a decision that was passed by the Supreme Court. It was dealt with even before this person came on. He doesn't even keep Shabbos. And anyway, his decision is limited to the use of, like I said, keeping markets open on Shabbos. So why do all this? It's all about finding ways to besmirch, right, the religious people and the religious way of lifestyle, and here it's religious coercion. And there was no mention of the fact that one of the major reasons why he decided to go ahead and implement this law was because many of the people who are employed during the week are forced to work on Shabbos in these stores, otherwise they'll lose their jobs. And these are people who might not be observant, even if they're not observant, they want to be with their families on Shabbos, they want to do their own things on Shabbos, but they're fixed into working on Shabbos in order to keep their jobs, instead of enjoying themselves like everybody else wants to enjoy on Shabbos and complaining that they won't be able to because they're closing the markets. The whole point is markets are it's not like a restaurant or a bar or anything like that. food staples that you can get any other time during the week. So you have to buy your milk on Saturday, so buy your milk on Friday. And milk is good for a few days. Buy it on Wednesday if Friday is busy for you. It'll certainly last through Shabbos. I'm only talking about supermarkets. It's just an example how the secular press really launched into this guy and launched into the whole idea of religious coercion and totally misled and misrepresented the facts. And it's all just another part of this kind of anti-religious propaganda, which is unfortunately perpetuated by certain people in the secular community here in Israel. A person has to be aware of the dangers of this type of a thing. Yesh od simcha mara kela'ana. There's another type of joy, which even though, of course, in general, joy is a good thing, but here's expressing first the negative aspects of it, which is like bitter, like wormwood. Kagon rodfei niuf. People who are running after sexual immorality. V'gozel, or theft. Ushar averos, usmechim b'hasiga matavos aros, and they're happy about attaining that. So you have people who are interested in all types of extremes and excesses, and they're all thrilled and excited about it. But as we mentioned yesterday, these types of things are only temporary quick fixes that people look for in order to fill the vacuum of bitterness which their normal lives create for them. So they have these injections which they inject in order to stimulate them, and therefore they go into this type of thing and that type of thing and this type of place and that type of place and this type of relationship and another type of relationship, where temporarily it gives a person a real thrill, yeah? And you look at the clubs, they're full of people who are just like raving, waving and excited and jumping and everything and all that stuff. But it's all to deflect their sorrow and their pain over really having no content in their lives. While Elu Nemar, regarding such people, it says, Asmechim asois ra yagilu b'taha puchois ra. People who are happy to do evil, they will rejoice when things are turned upside down for bad. Because this is what they want. V'onsham gadol ad sha'ol tachtis. The punishment for these people is very severe. It's not so much the idea that there's punishment as retribution because they've been evil, but because God, in His greatness and in His love for every person, wants every person to be pure. But if a person's tainted and sullied himself, he's going to have to be cleansed. So the punishment is not a punishment as punitive in the same way that the idea is that it be puritative. So if you think about a football jersey, define football however you'd like, depending on where you're from. But if you have a football jersey, that jersey might become very dirty. To be able to use it in the next game, you've got to put it in the laundry machine. The more heavily soiled that jersey has become, the more you have to wrench that dirt out of it in order to make it ready for the next game. And therefore, this is often the point, that a person who goes to such excesses and such extremes and becomes sullied through these types of spiritually harmful things, in order for the person to be able to continue playing in the next game, that might involve going into the world to come, it might involve reincarnation, but whatever it is, that soul is going to have to be laundered. And I wouldn't want to be a jersey that I wouldn't want to feel, right? I wouldn't want to feel what that jersey would feel if it felt what's going on when it's tumbling around inside that washer. But of course, the point is not to be punitive, it's puritative. V'yesh od simcha me'oreves, you have another type of joy which is like intermingled. Hamale oshan l'kol mitzvos, which is like a cloud cover for all of the mitzvos. Hamishakachas yiras Hashem, which causes a person to forget God yisbarach milibo v'nei adam, from the hearts of people. Kagon elu hamishtakrim v'smechim bebeis mishtei. And this is talking about people who get drunk and who have a good time in the bars and stuff like this. He says this is a type of joy which is like intermingled, good and bad. It's not entirely bad, yeah, but it's not so good either. Right? Going out to the bars and getting drunk or getting high and these types of things is not the greatest thing. Why? Because it can distract a person from fear of Hashem. And he's going to elaborate. And after the joy, this joy dissipates, after a person sobers up, or after, right, he comes down, he's going to be in a bad situation because a lot of harm comes through these types of scenarios, drinking, stuff like that. Person gets drunk, he starts to act like a jerk, and before you know it, a group of guys start to get a little rowdy, and then there's another group of guys who also are drinking and get a little rowdy, and before you know it, a word is passed, and then a chair is kicked, and before you know it, it becomes like a brawl. And don't tell me that's something that only happens in Wyoming, because it happens everywhere. It happens even here, and it can even happen to yeshiva students. Not only Baal Tshuva yeshiva students, but even regular yeshiva students who go out in town and have a drink or two, and before you know it, it can become ugly. And so long ago, our sages taught a very interesting teaching. They said as follows: 1 cup of wine makes a person like a sheep. A second glass of wine makes a person like a monkey. A third glass of wine, it becomes a lion. Maybe it's the other, like a lion. And the fourth cup of wine makes a person like a pig. What does this mean? You drink 1 glass and you're like all sheepish. You're mellow and everything's nice and sweet. Like a sheep braying. Second cup of wine, a person gets to be a little, rambunctious. Start jumping on the tables, rolling around, having a great time, getting a little rambunctious. Third cup of wine, a person starts to get all roary like a lion. He's ready to take on the world. Yeah. The fourth cup of wine, he becomes like a swine, vomiting and rolling around in his refuse. So there's nothing wrong with drinking a glass of wine, as long as you're sheepish. A sheep is kosher, right? Yeah? But once you start drinking in a way which is going to make you like a monkey or like a lion, and certainly like a swine, those 3 animals are not kosher. And therefore, a person is likely to be drawn into unacceptable, non-kosher type of behavior. So this is what he says here then. A person who's going to go and drink too much and be in an environment where it's all set up for the drinking. So even though temporarily it might make him happy, he might be having a grand old time, but ultimately a lot of harm can come of it. And I remember once some guys actually rolled a guy in a shopping cart from Ben Yehuda Street to the yeshiva. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was on my way out of the yeshiva. It was a Thursday night. We were doing an event here, and they were coming. Now, we were drinking here in the yeshiva. We were having a little mishmar, some beer and some vodka. We were having a grand old time. Happiness, joy, singing, laughter, good jokes, words of Torah, inspiration, dancing and singing. Everybody left here on a real positive high. And when I left the yeshiva, like I said, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. 3 or 4 guys were rolling this other guy. He was like hanging over the cart. And it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for them. It hurt. It was unfortunate. They could have been drinking here in a kosher way and having a good time. They had to schlep the guy back to yeshiva in a shopping cart. Just for the camera, that's not indicative of the normal situation here in the yeshiva. That was one exception of one guy and a group of his friends. Umi bechokma chacham kishlomo, who was wise, having the wisdom of Solomon, ben David, the son of David. Asher Omer, who said, Lemi oi, lemi avoy, to whom shall apply the phrase oi va'avoy. You've heard the phrase oi? Right? Oi va'avoy. You thought that was Yiddish, right? It actually comes from Emmanuel? It comes from a pasuk. You see that? Lemi oi, lemi avoy. That's oi va'avoy. Oi va'avoy. Oi and avoy. Yeah? Lemi medayanim, lemi siach, lemi pitzoim, chinam, lemi hachalilu seinaim, lemachrim alayain, lebayim lachkor mimsach. So he says, to who will have oy vavoy, and who will have sickness, and who will have sores for no reason, and who will be bloodshot and weak-eyed. These are the people who come home late from drinking wine and investigating connoisseurs of spirits. Yeah? So you see from here, from the Torah so long ago, you shouldn't mix your mix your alcohol. People are out drinking late wine and looking into other types of inebriating substances. Gamanovi Omar, the prophet also said, Hoi mashkimi v'boiker shecha yerdoifu. Oh, look at these people who wake up early in the morning looking for drink. Machrei v'nefesh yain yadlikem. And they go all day long continuing to look for wine in the evening. Drunkards. V'omar, and furthermore it says, V'haya kinor v'nevel toif v'chalil v'yain mishtehem v'espor Hashem lo yabitu. Behold, there's a certain category of people who are playing the fiddle and the harp and the drum and the flute, and wine is the substance of their gatherings, but the service of God they do not hearken. U'maaseh yodov lo ra'u. The creation of his hands they do not contemplate. Meaning they're only interested in living their lives in this type of a drunken stupor, enjoying themselves by indulging in all of the kind of immediate pleasures of mood modifiers, but in the end of the day, it's going to affect their knowledge of God. V'omer lechen, it says, Gola ami mibli das, my people have been exiled because of a lack of understanding. Ukvodo mesei rav vehamono sicheach tzamei, and their honored have become like those who die from hunger. Vehamono sicheach tzamei, and their people have become parched with thirst. So he's talking about the Jewish people who depart from the Torah and are interested in indulging themselves. Their wives will become hungry and the people will become thirsty. Very often we find that hunger and thirst are a metaphor for the desire for God. So the flip side of this is that often you find that even if you have a generation of Jews who are looking for pleasure in foreign pastures, ultimately the result of that will be a generation who is raised with spiritual hunger and thirst. And many of us are the product of that phenomenon, which is why we're here, in order to satiate ourselves with the fulfilling words of the Torah and in order to imbibe the living waters of its teachings. V'omer, furthermore it says, L'chen hirchiva sha'ol nafsha upara piha, so hell will open up its mouth and livlich choik v'yarad hadara v'hamoina v'sha'oina v'olaz ba, in order to swallow up basically the transgressions of all of these people, and hell will be all the happier for using them as fuel to fire its flames. V'nemar, and it says, V'gam ele b'yayin shagu, and these two have transgressed, made mistakes through wine. And of course, like I said, it's not just wine, it's any other thing that affects a person. U'b'sheichar to, with beer they have mistaken. Kohen v'novi shagu b'sheichar v'nivlu min hayayin, to min ha'sheichar, shagu b'roe, paku pelilia. So it's basically also talking about how the people, even the leaders, the wise, have become led astray through these different types of things. Re'eh ma kilkul ba min hayayin, see what harm comes through wine. Uksi, furthermore it says, let's hayayin, home sheichar, a scoffer who is a drunkard, he desires alcohol, v'kol shogebo lo yachkam, and anybody who kind of gets used to this habit of drinking, so he will never become wise. And a person might say, well, look, whether he's drinking or whether he's using some other type of mood modifier, right? Maybe it'll kind of like heighten his awareness. Maybe it will open spiritual doors and give him some type of a window into a world that he didn't know existed before. And this could be used as a catalyst in order to get closer to God. Right? That all might be true to a certain extent, but ultimately it's going to make a person more and more dependent on that as a way of getting that result. And in the meantime, not only his mind, but the rest of his bodily functions have become blurred and occluded, so that ultimately he's not going to be able to attain the type of enlightenment that he wants. And he's going to get high each time thinking he's talking about the most elevated and sophisticated and mind-expanding types of topics, when anybody who's straight would listen and say he's talking a bunch of BS. Why? Because his mind doesn't think so clearly. Maybe initially it was like that, but that's not how it ends up. Yeah? and therefore it's really a non-starter. It's really a non-starter. Wine causes a person to become like a jester and a scoffer, and somebody who's just talking all the time nonsense. So that a person who drinks too much will not become wise. Why? Because he's constantly babbling a bunch of junk that he's spurting out, basically vomiting out because of his drunkenness. Kosav Rabbeinu Moshe HaMaimoni. It was written by Rabbeinu Moshe HaMaimoni. Who is that?
Rambam.
Very good, Rambam. Why is it called the Rambam? Rabbi Moshe ben? No, that's Ramban.
Rambam.
Yes.
Moshe ben Maimon.
Exactly, that's why it says here. Rav Moshe HaMaimoni. Yes, that's the Rambam. Rav Moshe ben Maimon. That's why it's called the Rambam. Ramban is Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. So Rambam and Ramban. The one is called Maimonides, the other is called Nachmanides, after the names of their fathers. So Kosav Rabbeinu Moshe HaMaimoni, it was written by the Rambam, HaKibutz al Hashtia HaMeshakeres, gathering together over alcoholic beverages, Roi Shetieh Etzlecha Yoiser Cherpa Mihitkabetz Anoshim Arumim Migilui Erva, should be more embarrassing to you than people getting together naked. Just as you can imagine, some people might be, nowadays it's not necessarily true, embarrassed about gathering together naked, so you should be embarrassed to get together for the purpose of drinking, just to get drunk. Vashikrus hu maaseh hara. Drinking is a bad, getting drunk is a bad thing. Because it extinguishes the breath that God breathed into one's nostrils, meaning it extinguishes the soul. But when is drinking good? Does drinking have no redeeming
celebration?
Yeah, very good. We know that, for example, like I said in the previous teaching, one glass of wine makes a person sheepish. That's okay, that's kosher. We also know that you use wine for celebrations and for kiddush and to make a l'chaim and for yortzites and for Purim, right? According to many opinions, you should get outright drunk on Purim. Yeah, so there must be some redeeming value for wine. And there's the midrash that I quoted before, which talks about the 4 cups of wine corresponding to the 4 different animals, is actually the second part of a longer teaching, where the beginning of that teaching says that when Noah went into the flood, he took when he went into the ark as a result of the flood, he took a certain vine, a sapling of a vine, which was antediluvian, meaning from before the flood. He brought it onto the ark, and when the ark landed, one of the first things he did, we're told in the Torah, is that he planted a vine. And according to this midrash, the Satan appeared to Noach as he was planting and irrigating this vine, and he said, "Hey, what's that?" Noach said, "This is a remnant of a vine from before the flood, and I want to continue the wine that we had from before the flood till after the flood." So Satan says, "Hey, do you mind if we go like 50-50 on this? I'd like to be your partner. We can tend the vine together." So Noach agreed. And the Midrash says that as Noach was pouring water into the vine, the Satan went and slaughtered these 4 animals that I mentioned before, and poured their blood into the wine, onto the vine. So that Noach was irrigating the vine with water, and Satan was irrigating it with the blood from these animals. And it's from here that the Midrash says that you should know this is so, that when a person drinks 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups, 4 cups, why? Because intermingled in the blood of the vine, using the metaphor of blood for wine, is the characteristic of the blood of these 4 animals. But there's a flip side of that, which is even though the Satan was pouring in the blood of these animals, Noach was pouring in water. And we know that Noach was a tzaddik. Like it says, Noach ish tzaddik. Haya b'dorosav. Ish Noach was a tzaddik. And he poured water, where water represents Torah. So that means that the same vine that was getting the blood from these animals was also getting the Torah from a tzaddik, which means within the wine you have the possibility, you have the potential, the capability for both the negative expression, the animalistic type of expressions that can come across, manifestations that come out of the drinking, but you can also have tremendous Torah coming out as a result of becoming drunk as well. That's the aspect of wine that we try and draw out, that we try and pour out when we have Kiddush, when we have a celebration, when we have the 4 cups of wine on Passover, when you have 40 cups of wine, if you can, on Purim. Yeah, that's all with the idea of where that water, where the blood of the wine, in that case, is the water of Torah coming from a tzaddik. And this is appropriate where it says the teaching, Nichnas yain, yotze sod. Have you heard this phrase before? The Gemara says, when wine comes in, Nichnas yain, yotze sod. Secrets come out. What types of secrets? It depends on what type of wine. If it's non-kosher wine, and I don't mean to say non-kosher in the strict kosher sense, I mean to say non-kosher wine in terms of the blood of these animals. If your drinking is non-kosher, even if it's kosher wine, but if your drinking is not kosher, then the secrets that are going to come out are going to be dirty, filth. However, if your drinking is a drinking which is drinking appropriate for a tzaddik, which is full of the water of Torah, so then the secrets that are going to be revealed are going to be the secrets of Torah. The secrets of Torah. And that's the type of drinking that a person should be doing on Passover, for example, or for on Purim. If you know that when you're drinking in a Torah type of a way, so that what comes out is not going to be vomit, but it's going to be beautiful flowing words of Torah, even if you're slurring them because you're really drunk. But the words of Torah that are inspiring and uplifting, by all means, drink as much as you can. But as soon as you know that the drinking is going to cause you to become a mess, then it's a mitzvah not to drink. How can you know in advance? The more Torah, the more water you pour into your vessel during the year, the more likely that drinking is going to have within it the component of water, which is the Torah that you've learned throughout the year. So the wine that comes in Purim is going to bring out the secrets of Torah that you've ingested, that you've imbibed throughout the year. But if throughout the year you've lived your life in a basically self-centered, egotistic, pleasure-seeking type of a way, it's pretty obvious that once you start drinking, the person's going to start acting like a jerk. And therefore, the preparation for Purim starts, right, a year before, all year long. The more Torah you pour in during the year, the more Torah is going to come out. And another idea that's associated with this teaching, I guess we'll have to end here, is that Nichnas yain yotze sod. Of course, you know Gematria ascribes a numerical equivalent to each Hebrew letter. Yain, yud, yud, nun, equals 10, 10, 50, which is 70. And sod is also 70. Samach is 60, and vav is 6, and dalet is 4. That's 70. So that yain equals sod. In wine, you have this latent ability to reveal secrets. What types of secrets? So again, it depends on what you put in. But proper drinking used by the proper person can actually be used to distill and to actually extract the secrets of Torah. So maybe that would be a good way of introducing the more positive aspects of drinking, which we'll discuss next time we meet. Okay, you're welcome.